thanks for coming on to my podcast. My podcast is Tech Talks with Zach, and I actually just recently did a podcast with you, Jeff. It was a lot of fun. We both do Toastmasters, and that's kind of how we had this connection. And both of us are kind of trying to do similar things, I think, right? With our podcasts and doing things electronically that way.
Yeah, I did not realize your podcast was tech related. So surprise, surprise. Mine is not really a podcast. I just do some interviews and I put them on our Toastmaster Facebook site. It's more about interviewing members of Toastmaster clubs. I'm a member of 2 clubs and I interview other members. And so the general public can kind of see why they joined and what the benefit is, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And I've benefited a lot from Toastmasters in many ways, certainly in my job, certainly in private life, like speeches at funerals and stuff even. Have you benefited from Toastmasters?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny, I haven't given any speeches at funerals, thank goodness.
Yeah, that is good.
I'm not looking forward to doing that.
Yeah.
And I've never toasted anyone.
Mm-hmm.
So common misconception, Toastmasters is about toasting. Not at all. I never toasted, although I did attend, there was a meeting where somebody actually did a toast. That was one of their projects they were working on. And it was maybe a 1 minute, 2 minute toast. And they brought grape juice, I think. I don't think we actually had real champagne. Anyway, that was pretty cool. That was one of my favorite meetings.
Yeah. So Toastmasters is not about toasting.
No, and it's not about toast. It's not about
toast.
It's not about burnt bread either. It's actually just about communication and leadership skills, things like that. So yeah, it's interesting. I joined 3.5 years ago, and really my goal was just to get out of the house, socialize a little bit more. I was at both my job. I had just made a transition to a new job. Prior to that, I worked out of my house 5 days a week, had very little direct interaction, kind of like we are now, unfortunately, because we're in the middle of the coronavirus. But I started a new job. I was in IT. So that was a bit of a change. We'll get to all that later. But yeah, I really just, having not spoken in person to people in 4 or 5 years, I mean, at least in my job, I lost some of the ability to do that. And then once I'm thrown into this IT job and now I'm going to the office every day, I realized I didn't have those communication skills. So I really wanted to work on that and just have more exposure, more social exposure. That's why I joined. Then fast forward 2.5 years, I get this job opportunity at work, and it's very much focused on communication and leadership skills, much more so than before, where I really need to be able to articulate a vision, mm-hmm. persuade people, and all of mm-hmm. those types of skills. So yeah, it certainly helped me for the reason why I joined in the first place, which was just to get out and socialize more and interact with people more. But then it also had other benefits later on.
I think that's really common. It's interesting that you mentioned swinging from working from home and then going more into the office. Now it looks like, because of everything that's going on, we might be swinging back the opposite way for a little while.
Definitely for a little while. A little while is okay.
Yeah.
When you do it for 5 years, and my colleagues were really all over the place. So we had a guy in London. The headquarters was out in New York. We had a guy in Australia. We had some people on the West Coast and India. We had an office in India. So it didn't really even make sense to go into the office. I was just taking up space in the cube. but wow, it's totally different. You can't go to lunch with somebody virtually. Although we can drink virtually.
I know.
You have your beer and I have my Coke.
I did have a beer because you gave a speech on beers, and so I figured you'd have a beer. It's after 5, but you know what? Now I realize I don't even have I can't twist this off. I don't have an opener, so I'm going to have to go, chill without it. But yeah,
so our company, it doesn't matter if it's after 5 or not. We have a beer refrigerator down on our first floor.
Oh, okay.
And in our home office in Boston, they have it on tap.
Really?
Yeah. So crazy.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. You work for Cengage?
Cengage. Yeah, Cengage Learning,
okay.
Yes.
Okay. That's cool, man. Yeah, that's my office also just recently got a beer fridge, but nobody really touches it at Dell. So I think we're a little gun shy. But as soon as somebody does, I feel like it'd be okay. Yeah. So you got a family too, I assume, right?
I do.
Yeah. So who's what you want to talk about that a little bit, or?
Sure. My wife and I celebrated. Gosh, I think it's 24 years. That was February 9th. We did a little trip to Phoenix. I run, we'll probably talk about that later as well, but I did a marathon in Phoenix, and then we ended up spending the weekend and kind of celebrating. My daughter goes to Miami University. She's home now as well, online classes only, and they've shut down the campus for the most part. And that's the extent. It's just my wife and my daughter, and we do have some pets. We have 2 dogs and a cat.
Nice. And you guys live around Cincinnati. I'm in the Wyoming area, and I think you're in Milford. Okay. Yeah. Cool. So that's east side. Yep.
I'm originally a West Sider, though. I grew up on the West Side, the best side. Went to West High, Western Hills High School. Yeah. So
really?
True through and through, true blood West Sider.
Yeah.
Born and raised.
Yeah. There's a big divide in Cincinnati between the West and the East Side, and you seem like you're a little bit of a traitor, though. Even though down deep, you're still a West Sider.
Yeah, I'm definitely a West Sider. I can't figure out the streets over here on the East Side. It doesn't make sense to me at all.
Yeah.
And I've lived here for 25 years. Actually, I've been over here, and I do a lot of cycling and running, so I'm familiar with all the back streets, but it just it doesn't have any rhyme or reason or any pattern over here on the East Side. I don't know who invented or who laid out the streets over here, but it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, nothing really makes sense over on the East Side. Just a different group of people. Yeah, so that's good. Were you planning on any trips recently with your family? Are those going to be delayed, or no trips?
Wow, we just got back in January from Hawaii.
Oh, nice.
It's about the middle of January. So yeah, if that would have been delayed a few months, not good. And it was a cruise. It was a cruise as well. So we flew to Hawaii, but then we cruised around all of the islands. It's a good way to see Hawaii because you're just in one hotel, if you want to think of it. It's a floating hotel, but nonetheless, you just have to unload your luggage once. Mm-hmm. And you use the cruise ship as a floating hotel, and your meals are there as well. So it's just a good way. And you're docked at a port. Sometimes some locations you are docked for 2 days, so 1 to 2 days. So you can you can spend a lot of time off the boat and explore the island. So it's a good way. I think it's a good way to see all the islands.
Do you scuba dive?
I was certified at one point. I have 2 older brothers, and all 3 of us, one of the brothers, whatever one of the brothers does, the other 2 eventually follow. Yeah. One of them got into cycling, and then all of us got into cycling, and then one of them got into scuba diving. Might have been the same brother, and then all of us had to do it. So at one point I was certified, but I have not scuba dived in, decades.
I
So
was going to
now
see if
it's
you did.
just snorkel.
Yeah. So did you do any snorkeling over in Hawaii?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Did you see anything cool? Like a
Yeah, I think the coolest thing, the one day the seas were really rough, and the reef that we were at was part of it's called Molokini Crater, I think is the name of it, and it's a crater that I guess it's a volcanic crater that sits right above the water line, maybe 20 feet above, and then of course it goes below, and it's a reef where all kinds of exotic fish. But the day we were there, it was rough, so that wasn't so great. But we did another trip out just off of Kona on the Big Island, and that was amazing. Just every kind of fish you can imagine. The native or the state fish of Hawaii, and I can't remember what the name of it is now, but it's like a 20-syllable name, like hala hala
oh
mula mula
yeah.
kala kala wala.
Yeah. I think I've
That's a
heard
very
that.
colorful fish. So that's really interesting.
Yeah.
The most interesting thing is that one of the divers or one of the snorkelers on our trip, that one of the guides told my daughter that you could hear the sounds of the whales. So we did see a couple whales. Again, I think it was off of Kona, and he said you could hear it underwater.
Huh.
And she said she could actually hear some of the noises
Uh,
from these whales. And I didn't believe it until I had recorded. I had a GoPro camera, I had a waterproof case in it, and I took a bunch of video. And when I played it back, you could hear on the recording.
oh, that's
So the sounds
cool.
of the whales.
So
So that
what
sounds
does it
really
sound
cool.
like? Like clicks, or is it like a
No, more
what is
just
it?
like a exactly.
Oh,
Yeah.
like Dory and what is that? Finding Nemo? Do you know?
Yeah,
Is it like that or no?
it is. Yeah,
It is
yeah.
really wow.
It's very, very faint, but yeah, you can hear it. So I thought that was really cool that we were able to pick
Yeah,
that up on the recording.
yeah, that's cool, man. That's cool. Did you do any running over there?
So I was training for a marathon. The marathon I was training for was the Phoenix. It was Phoenix Mesa, has a new name, but I can't remember what the name is. And that was in early February. We were there about mid-January. So I did my long run over there. Usually try to do about a 20-mile run. It wasn't quite 20, but it was a lot of uphill. And it
Whew.
was a sudden temperature change from
Hot.
20s here in Cincinnati area to 80s,
Yeah.
75 to 80. So it was a difficult run, but amazing all around. I ran on, we were on Oahu in Honolulu, which is on Oahu, and that's where I did my long run. So that's about it. After that, I just ran wherever I could, but not, the main thing was doing the long run.
Yeah, yeah. No. I've 20 miles is a lot of miles.
Yeah, it is.
I picked up running recently and now I'm running more. I think I'm going to be running even more because I do judo and I also weightlift. And because of those two things being canceled basically for a while, I'm going to be running a lot. But the weather is fantastic here for running right now. Like you can really bust it out. I did
Yeah.
10 miles
Oh, great.
yesterday and I was like dead after that. So 20 is aggressive for me. Yeah.
Did 21 on Saturday,
Yeah.
and now, well, we were training to do Carmel, Indiana. That's April 4th. That's now been postponed, or is imminently going to be postponed. So it's kind of all for naught. It looks like everything's going to get postponed until June when it's nice and hot,
Yeah.
or into the fall. So
Do you do so when you run, are you running like 20 straight miles at 140 heart rate, or like is there a specific metric that you're trying to hit when you run? And do you run for like long distances, or do you run and then stop for a little bit, I guess is my question.
yeah. So the long answer, and I want to circle back to something you said a few minutes ago. You talked about weightlifting. A really key thing for runners is not to run all the time. So you definitely want to cross train, and weightlifting is a great thing. Personally don't do legs just because I'm using my legs so much. Some people will do that even during their training season, but I definitely focus on arms, core, strength, abs. Use so much of that in running that if you're not working those muscles, they'll fatigue very quickly. And it's not enough. They don't get enough exercise during your normal training runs.
Yeah.
And when you do a marathon, when you get into mile 22, 23, you really want those muscles to be solid. So I definitely do that, usually 3 times a week, some kind of weightlifting or load-bearing exercise. I do cycling when it's warm. A few years ago, I rode all year round, and I just don't ever want to do that again. It's just horrible in the wintertime.
Yeah.
But it is good. That's great cross training as long as you don't overdo it. So to circle back to your question, it was so do I run 21 miles at once without stopping? Yes. But I do one long run a week, and you build up to 20. Actually, we were supposed to do 18. The course was a little bit off, so we ended up doing 19, and then we did a couple mile warm up, 2 miles warm up prior to this. That's the 21. But generally, if you train for a marathon, you don't want to do a marathon because it takes so long to recover. So usually 20, 21, whatever is the maximum that you'll do, and usually do 2, maybe 3 of those prior to the marathon. But yeah, you're building up. Maybe you start at 12, then you do 14.
So for speed wise, how are you monitoring your speed? You got to watch, and is it by heart rate or is it by miles per hours per mile or whatever?
Yeah, minutes per mile.
Minutes per mile, excuse me.
I look at the pace because usually, and I've done quite a few marathons, so I'm trying to break or trying to hit a certain time in the marathon. So either to do a personal record, or in my case, I was trying to qualify for Boston, which would also be a personal record. So Boston is, for my age group, I'm 56 years old. I have to run a 3:35 to qualify, to even be considered for qualifying. At that point, they'll take however many people that are under that 3:35 mark that are in my age group, which is 55 to 59. And they'll crunch that down into, they'll have a quota of how many people they want in that age group. It just depends on how many people have actually pre-qualified, if you want to think of it that way. And so they might trim that down. Typically, they'll trim it down. So my actual time, if I go back and look at last year, how many people made it in, or what time they had to run to make it in, it was like a 3:33 or 3:32 and a half. I don't remember exactly. So I figure I need to do 3:32 or under. But 3:30 is an 8-minute pace. So that's kind of what I'm shooting for.
So what are you training at? 10-minute pace, or are you training at 9 or 8-minute, or what are you training at?
So it depends on earlier in the week, I'm doing speed work. So I might be doing track work, and some of those miles can be 6:30, 6:45, somewhere around there, depending on how many repeats I'm doing. So it's, you're way, way beyond what you're going to be doing in the marathon. And then midweek, you're running 8 to 8:30, and you might throw a tempo run in there that's a little quicker than 8, maybe 7:50, 7:45, something like that. And then the long run, typically it's slower, so it might be 9 minutes or 8:30 to 9. But occasionally you want to throw in a faster one just to make sure, so you have some confidence going into the race that you can actually run that distance. So that's really what I was trying to do this weekend. I ended up doing about 8:30 pace is what I averaged, and I really needed to do closer to an 8. So
okay. Well,
Long story long.
no, I'm just curious because I think it's helpful to understand how to train for a new sport that you're kind of getting into. And that's the basic guidelines that I've heard as well from runners is kind of similar training styles as you. I think I do a little bit more pure cardio than you, but I might mix in more of that track stuff and faster stuff later. Yeah, so that's pretty cool.
It is interesting.
Um,
I'll just say one last thing. Based on what I've read, and I've done this before as well. I've trained this way. This year, I'm actually doing some faster, longer runs just to have some confidence going into the marathon. But you can do fast and slow runs and never combine your speed work with your long run until the marathon. There are some training programs that actually preach that approach, and it works. And so it's
wow.
really odd. You never run, let's say you have to run an 8-minute pace for the marathon, but you never run that in training. You're always a minute slower, but you counteract that with some, a lot of speed work and some faster runs during the week. And then you bring them both together at the marathon. And it works.
That sounds challenging to me for pacing reasons, and that's it. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Yeah. But I mean, I'd like to try it, honestly. So you are also, so you're a big runner, big public speaker. Yeah, big public speaker. We both speak a fair amount, I would say. I would say pretty big public speaker, We compete at competitions. Mm-hmm. And, the other piece is that you're in IT. What do you do for your company? Cengage is they do online textbooks. Is that right?
That's right. They're a traditional publisher of secondary education. They definitely cover more than that. They cover K through 12. They do higher education, which is secondary schools, college, universities, and lots of little niche areas. English as a second language. They own some National Geographic material. They own, if you've ever heard of Chilton's Automotive, like if you're working on your car or whatever, okay. They have those manuals, and the list goes on and on. But the key area that they're in is higher ed, colleges and universities. So the company was Thompson Publishing. They're a 100-plus-year-old company, traditional publishing, textbooks. McGraw-Hill would be like a competitor that people have heard of. Pearson is another competitor. But definitely the trend in the last 4 or 5 years is digital. So it's courseware where you're logging in through an app. Mm-hmm. You're getting your content through that app. You're able to do homework assignments. Your professor can track how much your level of engagement, how much you're reading.
Yeah.
We can produce reports that can correlate, how much you are engaged versus your grade.
Yeah.
And surprise, surprise.
There's a correlation there.
You tend to do well when you study.
When you're engaged, yeah.
So that's kind of courseware. There's ebooks, so just electronic books where you would just access the material over an ebook reader, similar to like a Kindle or something like that. Again, that would be an app, or it would be an online through a web browser. And then there's traditional textbooks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting, because I originally was saying that it's just online textbooks, but you guys actually own the rights to a lot of these things. Like McGraw-Hill, the publisher means you actually own, you publish things.
Exactly.
You're not just the learning platform, but you're also the learning platform.
Yeah, we're a publisher and the learning platform. Absolutely.
Okay.
So really the industry now, we would refer to ourselves as education technology because it's moving so rapidly towards the technology part, but definitely we're a publisher. We work with authors to produce the books and online content. We pay them royalties, all of that sort of thing. The latest thing we do, which is really interesting, which only our company is doing right now, is a subscription-based experience. So this is where a student could buy a subscription for a semester or a full year and have access to our entire digital portfolio, which is a lot of content, 20,000 titles, I think. And they're expanding that traditionally that included just the courseware, but now it's going to include ebooks as well. So I don't remember what the number is, but it's tens and tens of thousands of titles. Yeah. So, and that's not to sound like a commercial. The one semester is $119, I believe it is, $119. So if you have one book that you've already paid for that, because typically a book costs more than that. If you have two classes where you can use, where you're using our content and it's covered by our unlimited, we call it Cengage Unlimited subscription, then you really start to save a lot of money the more classes you have. And we have some colleges, so 2-year colleges, and we may have some universities as well, where they bake that into the price of tuition. So therefore,
so then you don't have the book fee of,
you don't have to pay anything.
Yeah, that's good.
So it's a pretty cool model, and we'll just have to see. We really just started a couple of years ago. It's taken off. Definitely.
Yeah. I'll definitely say that going through engineering school, I went through mechanical engineering at Miami University, and the costs of books were very, very high, easily like 500 plus a semester, easily. That's with used, so that's a big thing. So what do you do for Cengage, Jeff?
I am now an enterprise architect in the back office systems. We call it global technology solutions, but that's our acronym, GTS, for the back office system. So these are the systems that, regardless of whether you're at Cengage or at Dell or Kroger or whatever, they tend to be this. You tend to have the same back office system. So you have some kind of ERP financial system. You have, there might be an inventory system that's part of that.
Just to kind of bring it up, ERP is enterprise resource planning. And that's basically all of the back end financial stuff. You did say finances, but sometimes acronyms I remember when I was first getting into the IT space, I was like, it sounds like another language. But I understand what you're saying. So the back office systems, so ERP, enterprise resource planning, oftentimes those things are like databases like Oracle, right?
There's sales systems that support the salespeople. There are product master systems that keep track of all of the products you have, in our case, books. If it was Dell, they have I'm sure they have a product master that keeps track of all the pieces and parts and components of a laptop, for example.
Yeah. In my company, they definitely have systems like that. Yep.
There's ordering systems for online ordering, customer support systems, and the list goes on and on and on. We probably have, there's probably 40 or 50 different back office systems. Now, and there's a dividing line at our company because we are a technology company. We have customer facing systems as well. So when you're buying a book online, or maybe you have this subscription and you can pick, somehow you have to select what book you want access to, or books that you want access to. And so there is a front end customer facing applications, I should say. So think of Netflix as a good example of the subscription. You want to go out and pick your movie. They give you they have an app, and they have a website.
Yeah.
So there are those types of systems as well. And the line has really started to become more blurred because those front office systems, or customer facing systems, rely on data that you have on the back office system. So it's not just, you buy a book and you got to make sure that the authors get paid. You go through a royalty system and you go through an online ordering. It's capturing analytics from the user experience, but it's giving them kind of a seamless checkout process.
So you're taking your data. So what you're kind of doing is you've got your data coming in from your online ordering system, and that has to be communicated with other applications on your internal site. Is that kind of what we're talking about here? Like, so the data has to be communicated to different applications, all the same set type of thing, or am I off base there?
Yeah, that sounds accurate. Yeah.
Okay. And then that is called ESB. That's called an enterprise service bus. Is that?
So yeah, that's interesting. That is that's the department I came from. So I'll give you a very long history there. But when I first started at Cengage, I worked on the integrations team. And one of the tools that you would use, there's a couple different kinds of integration. There's more batch style data integration. There's real time or integration on the wire between APIs. Mm-hmm. That's where you might use an enterprise service bus. That was my background. Really? And then recently, in the last 6 months or so, I moved to an enterprise architect role, which is a little more communication based at a higher level. And not down in the weeds, no coding per se, but more oversight.
Okay.
And that's a sort of thing. Design.
But are you oversight and design of the same sorts of of things, or are you kind of switching up to a different area, I guess?
No, it is. I am an enterprise architect for back office systems.
Okay.
So I do the area that I was involved where I was a developer before with integrations. That certainly factors in. Mm-hmm. It's just not the only thing I focus on.
So now there's different pieces of that. There's integrations, and then there's other pieces within that same system, or that you're on top of as well. In the back office systems.
Really all the back office systems. Whereas before it was an interesting place to be in before on the integrations team, because you did get exposure to all of those systems because you were acting as the integrator between data warehouse and the customer relation manager and the inventory system and all. So you were the ESB, the service bus that was just the tool, but the integrations team really dealt with all of those different players. So at least I had some familiarity, but now I'm not focused on integrations. That's just one thing. And now it's really all of those different systems. And as the business needs change, so one of the things we're doing now, we've had a lot of success with this subscription approach, this Cengage Unlimited subscription. And now it's, well, how can you slice and dice that and to offer more of the same? So instead of one semester of $119, we're offering next fall, we're offering a $69 unlimited. That's just ebook. So you give the customers, and the customers have indicated, well, we don't really want just the courseware. The full subscription was courseware and ebook, but this new one is just ebook. So we just want ebook. Why would we have to buy the full for $119? So you offer them. So up to that point, we just had one subscription offering. It had different durations, but we just had one. Now we're slicing that into multiple subscription plans. So that requires a lot of changes to our back office systems and our front and our customer facing systems as well.
So that is it. That is an example of something that's making a big impact on your job, or are you actually helping? I'm just kind of curious. Do you help make the business calls, like we're going to switch the subscription model, or are you just kind of like so now we're changing the subscription model into these 4 different areas? Um, Now what kind of implications does that have on all of our systems?
Exactly. It's the latter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't, I don't know much about
No, that seems like a very
education.
financially, that seems like a very, I don't know, financially marketing, like that
Exactly.
type of
Exactly.
role. No, that makes sense. I have to ask, just because of everything that's going on, is there like any kind of implications for coronavirus? Because it seems like you have had like lots of people going and doing school from home. um I don't know if there's been like an uptick on subscriptions, or like if that's had any kind of back end influence on you at all.
You know, that's interesting. So we use Slack at work, and
Yeah.
there's 100 different Slack channels, but one of them is really for salespeople. Occasionally I will glance at it, but I can't say I really have seen what the chatter is. But typically uh, our big time of the year obviously is in August before school
Hmm.
starts, when people buy their books, and a lot of times they'll buy the books for the whole year. Having a little, so it's a huge amount of volume then. Uh, Also, right after that first semester, before the second semester began, so you have definitely a hit at that time in
Yeah.
January as well. So this time is relatively slow, but the sales cycle is busier around this time of year, because they're getting ready. They're talking, salespeople are
Yeah.
talking to
Yeah.
universities and professors and whatnot, getting ready for fall. So I think that there is a lot of chatter now. People are starting to understand, because they're scrambling. And
Yeah.
my own daughter is having this very issue. They've never had to do online classes before. Some professors have never done anything like that before, and so they're scrambling. They're trying to put lessons on YouTube, and
Yeah.
there's no platform for them to teach their class. So I think now maybe that's what some of the chatter is, where professors are starting to look at what's out there, and maybe that will influence what happens next fall and next year.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
this could happen again. I mean, this thing could be around for a while until there's a vaccine, and then there could be another one. So I think it's valuable to be able to at least do some of the online. I'm in total
Yeah.
favor of having classes in person,
Yeah.
but you can supplement. So it's our courseware, for example. So we have some courseware that is fully online.
Hmm.
So in other words, you never attend class in person, but most of it is supplemental. It's
Hmm.
not meant to replace face to face with an instructor. It's to supplement.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. It's definitely going to be a change. I saw my nephew had a history teacher who was doing an Instagram history review, and I thought it was really clever. Just using that platform, he was on Instagram, like, here's what the blah 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 blah. So, yeah, I did. So just so you're kind of aware, I think you're aware. I have a niece and a nephew who are 15 and 16. Uh, they are home from school right now as well. And I am home for 45 days.
Wow.
So I, they said salespeople, I'm part of the sales team. So I'm like the technical sales side.
Mm-hmm.
So sales engineer. So I get into the technical deep dive weeds of things. I'm always interested in that type of thing. But they were like, Dell was like, we don't want liability for you bringing anything onto the, or any kind of questions about you bringing anything onto the customer sites. So we were like pretty much the first ones they said to work from home for. So
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's it's an interesting time. What do you think about everything that's going on in the society and with all this stuff?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I do think it's. I hate to say it's an opportunity, but an opportunity because people are going to die. I mean, more so than they would from the flu. In particular, elderly. We've all seen the statistics. So that's tragic. But I do think if there's not a silver lining, but there's opportunity to do things different, to focus on some different things that you're not able to do face to face. I think if you're in college, my daughter takes a conducting class. Well, she can't conduct. You can't conduct virtually. You really need to be in front. But you can study conductors. You can do something different that you normally wouldn't do. So there's opportunities. The other thing I think is that it's really interesting or cool to see the level of global cooperation.
Mm-hmm.
It takes something like this, unfortunately, to really bring together the entire global community. So China is sharing their statistics, albeit maybe a little late, but they definitely seem to be more transparent now about the number of cases and the measures that they took to isolate people and to bring this thing under control. So yeah, on a worldwide scale, you're seeing that, and the role that technology plays. If this was 1918, getting the word out, just being able to communicate it would not happen, and people would not be able to work virtually like they can. Not everybody can, I realize that, but so for some businesses, I think it's devastating. If you own a bar
Oh
or a
yeah,
restaurant right now,
the entertainment business, the travel
airline,
business,
yeah,
very devastating.
but at least it's not. There are some industries where ours is a good example. I feel like at least my job is really unaffected. Probably, well, yours is more affected because your technical sales, so you're probably expected to be face to face. But I'm really never expected to be face to face. I only deal with
Mm-hmm.
internal customers. Almost no impact whatsoever to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I've actually enjoyed being home a little bit. Uh, I've gotten to see my family. All my kids are here. You know, my wife is here. So I've gotten closer with my family. And I think that that's definitely a positive, is that everybody, all these people who I work with, a lot of people who I work with, they've got two traveling parents. And then finally, both parents are home at the same time and everybody gets some family time. So maybe that's a silver lining as well. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. Did you mention 1918 because of the Spanish influenza or the Spanish
right,
flu?
right. Yeah,
Okay,
that's what was. Yeah.
I was just curious. I was like, because I had heard that that was something that people were looking at as well as some sort of comparison between the two.
Yeah, I think it was the last major pandemic.
Mhm.
I mean, there's SARS and MERS, but I don't know that they were pandemics. But 1918, or at least if they were, I don't know the number of people that died in 1918, but it was millions, I think.
Mhm.
So yeah, uh, I heard an interesting comparison between. It was actually Mike DeWine, governor of Ohio. I watched his press conference, or part of his press conference. And they were comparing St. Louis to Philadelphia during the 1918 Spanish flu, and how those two cities reacted very differently. So Philadelphia spent a couple weeks before they did any kind of social distancing, and initially their curve was pretty flat. The number of cases grew, but it grew at a very slow rate. St. Louis reacted within a couple days. Now they lagged behind Philadelphia, and but they hadn't really had time to learn the lessons of Philadelphia, because at that point, Philly had not, again, the number of cases stayed pretty flat. But St. Louis enacted within 2 days they were very aggressive about social distancing. What happened after that? Philadelphia took off exponentially, the number of
Mm-hmm.
cases, and St. Louis continued relatively flat. So I think the aggressive measures that DeWine has taken in Ohio are going to pay off. And you're seeing that around the country.
And that's what they call that flattening the curve. I think you mentioned that. And so the comparison here is that, like, here's just my perspective from what I've heard, is that, like, regardless of political parties or whatever, this is probably 10 to 15 times worse than a standard flu. And it may infect way more people as well. We don't know yet. We have no idea. But if it does, and the hospitals are all completely full because that curve is really steep and everybody's infected, then it will be much, much worse for everyone.
Yeah,
And that's
absolutely.
what the flattening the curve mentality is really about, because you don't want to be in that situation.
No, no.
So, but it's scary. And I
It is.
think that one of the things I was kind of thinking about today was, what is the best case scenario? And that's why I liked that you kind of started it with, here's the silver lining of the thing. And I agree. I think that there's definitely some silver linings. So what would be the best case scenario, do you think?
Oh, well, yeah, the best case would be that all of these social distancing measures that are happening really around the country, closing restaurants, closing bars, closing health clubs, on and on, obviously businesses, working from home, all of that works,
Mm-hmm.
and it flattens the curve, and we end up not having a lot of deaths from this, um, and things get back to normal, say late May, June. I think
Yeah.
that's a best case scenario.
Yeah. You think so? I just hope that things flatten out and then people continue to get better. And I think that, I think that all this time alone with families can help people. And then if we continue to do things like the YMCA near me, it closed their workout, and it's completely closed as a child's daycare for the healthcare workers. So if we continue to do things that kind of bring us together as a community, bring us together as family, maybe we don't worry so much about this materialism and how much money we have sitting in the stock market and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
that's very true.
And I mean, I think that could bring us closer and as better as a society. I don't know. I'd hope so anyways.
And at least the Fed is 0% or near 0%
Yeah.
interest to banks, and that'll trickle down. I think the last time we saw that was after 9/11. I remember I
Yeah.
bought a car. Wow, when did I buy? Yeah, it was a 2002, I think. So it would have been right after 9/11, and it was 0.9%
Yeah.
interest rate. I don't even know what they are now, but what's it?
That's
Three,
definitely better than,
4% or 5%.
yeah.
Yeah, but prior to that, I think the car interest was maybe 6%, 6,
Mm-hmm.
7%, and then it dropped down to 0.9. So that was fun having that
Well,
car.
this might be the time everybody refinance their house too.
And we refinanced as well. I remember refinancing.
I think
house.
I think I'm probably going to do that. Depending on how much it trickles down, I'll probably refinance my house. But yeah, cool, man. Do you have anything else that you want to talk about or to tell anybody, everyone?
No.
No? All
I
right.
don't think so.
Well, it was a pleasure talking with you, Jeff. Jeff Vaught from Milford, Ohio, and I'm Zach Fisher. Thanks for everybody for tuning in, and we'll look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you.